Hi, welcome to the Best of Mount Shasta. I'm Andrée Morgana, the producer of the show, and I started this show because when people come to visit our area, we're known as the spiritual destination, and people all over the world come here by the thousands to get rest and relaxation and reflection and to improve their spiritual experiences. Our mountain is considered a living consciousness. Everybody experiences the quiet and the silence and the beauty of it, no matter what their other interests are. And then there are those that stay and live here, come and go or stay and live here. And when I first came up here, I didn't know anybody. And as I started to meet the community, I saw that these people that had lived up here for a long time were really having incredible experiences, and each of them in a different way. And so I put together the Best of Mount Shasta conference to showcase the community in native healing, spirit and spirituality, discover yourself, alternative health and wellness, and our environment, nature speaks. And it's just a couple of days ago, or maybe a week ago now, I was at a wedding, of some local friends, and I met Beloved again, and we just sat down and started to chit-chat. And then all of a sudden, the conversation just started to go into what our experiences have been living here in Mount Shasta. And every time Beloved had something to say, it was like, oh, Beloved, can you please come and be on the show? Because what you're talking about, there's lots and lots of people awakening all over the world. People are by themselves. They don't have anybody to talk to. They're having your kinds of experiences. It would be really helpful. And so fortunately, Beloved agreed. And here we are today. I will say that I know that she's a director instructor of the LaHo-Chi Institute of Energy Healing, and she's also a sacred tantric dance instructor for women, along with being a musician, composer, and author. But that night when we were sitting down and talking, we were just talking about our personal lives and the spiritual development throughout our lives. And that's really what I think is so impressive and so deep about what you were saying. You really had a lot to say that not only was valuable for your own growth, but I just felt it would be so valuable for many other people that wish they had somebody to talk to that are having similar experiences. So please do tell us what it is we were talking about and go into some of these things.
Thank you, Andrée.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, it was really exciting to talk to Andrée because I had a lot of stories that were similar to hers, and we had our own experiences. And my spiritual growth took off when I was a late teen, when I met my mother-in-law, and she was a yoga teacher and had a spiritual practice, and she turned me on to wonderful books, and that was the extent of my spirituality until I was older. And I was a stay-at-home mom with 3 kids, married 20 years, had this wonderful Leave It to Beaver life, happily married, and enjoyed being a stay-at-home mom and active in the Montessori school and on the board there. And then my girlfriend, Cindy, who I'd known since I was 2 years old, took LaHo-Chi from her sister and brother-in-law, Rio and Dan Watson. And they were the ones who started the LaHo-Chi Institute and founded it because they wanted to hold the integrity of the work, because they had found it so amazing and so powerfully spiritually enhancing in their lives. And so Cindy had taken it, and she would give me massages, and she would put her hands on me at the end of the massage and just hold them still and run energy on me. And I had really profound blissed out experiences where I'd see waves of violet light rolling through my field and feel expanded and feel deeply, profoundly loved in ways I had never experienced before. And it was like full body meditation in heaven is what it felt like. And so I kept having this experience with every massage she would give me. And each time I'd say, "What are you doing?" And she'd say, "It's LaHo-Chi. It's really cool. You should take it." And so I really didn't want to, being a busy mom, but finally I was just so curious I had to. And the very first day, in the first session that I received in the training, I opened up in a big way. All my subtle senses opened, all the clairs. My feeling and hearing and seeing and knowing just skyrocketed into realms and orbits I had never launched into before. And I started hearing, really clearly in my head these names. And when I came out of my session, the woman who had given me the session said, "Well, what did you experience?" And I said, "Well, I kept hearing these 4 women's names, but I don't know who they are." And she said, "Well, tell me the names." And when I told her, she said, "Oh, that's all the women in my family." And I had no idea how I had accessed that information or why, or if I could ever do it again. But that was the beginning. And the more I did the work, the more I was in classes, the more I gave sessions, the more I received or did self-healing, the more I opened up. And it was so profound. Like every day was a new experience. I started seeing colors and auras. I started hearing things. I received guidance. I was being taught how to open more deeply into guidance. I started channeling poetry and messages and teachings. And then it went into mediumship and trance channeling. And it was just a profound, huge shift in my life that changed everything.
So what are these pictures that we're looking at right now?
So this is a picture of people on massage tables in the LaHo-Chi training. And I used to teach them about 4 times a year. Right now with COVID, it's slowed down a little, but I am teaching again in the first weekend in November here in Mount Shasta. This work is easy to use and easy to learn, and you learn everything in one weekend. It's an experiential workshop, not something you have to worry about taking notes, and it's joyful and it's profound. I'm not the only one who's opened up like this. It's not the focus of the teaching, but it is definitely a byproduct for people to open up and have these profound experiences. Yeah.
That's very interesting. I remember when you were talking about that, and then you started talking about the channeling, and that's where I got really interested, because Mount Shasta is known for channeling worldwide. People are interested to come here and meet the ascended masters and learn how to go from the 3rd dimension to the 5th dimension and learn about ascension and all kinds of things that are sort of already established here. Yeah. And yet when people come here, the channeling is their own way of it, and it's not like how it has been mainstream up here.
Right.
And so that, when you started to talk about that, I thought, oh my gosh, this is so interesting. And yet it's still a subject in our country and around the world that people don't want to talk about, and yet thousands and millions of people are awakening and having these experiences. So it's important for them to have a support group, for them to know that this isn't, something strange or not good or things like that, but it's all part of life, and it's part of what is available in life and part of all of creation. Yeah. So talk about some of your experiences, because I thought they were wonderful, and just for a show like this would be very helpful for people.
Well, I didn't have any interest in channeling. I just was minding my own business, being busy as a mom, and then spending time with LaHo-Chi as I could. And what happened was I went to dinner at a friend's house, and there were a few of us at the table. We were all close friends, and we had all taken LaHo-Chi and were familiar with it. And I was talking about how we all come in with different gifts, and just acknowledging my friends for the gifts they carried. And so as I was moving around the table, focusing on each one, I got to my friend Michael, who was sitting directly across from me at the table. And I was trying to see his energy energetically. I was trying to see it within my subtle senses. And so I couldn't see it. I was seeing this huge golden white light. And just like when you hold a book too close to your face, you have to back up a little bit from it to focus on the text. I was trying to do that with his energy. But the more I backed up figuratively in my mind, the more the light grew. And so I'm backing up out of the dining room. Pretty soon I'm imagining myself out, above the house. And then I'm out of the state and out of the country. And I'm finally up in the star fields having this experience of the light growing. And all of a sudden, I just went right out of my body and out of awareness. My only experience was of the light, of being one with light, in a chalice of light. I was the chalice. I was the light. There was no thought, isn't this pretty? Isn't this cool? Or what's going on? It just was me in the light. When I came out of that experience, I felt like, I don't know, re-entry was really difficult. I felt like my body was crashing. I felt raw. My nerves felt raw. I felt terrible, like I was going to throw up and pass out, and I ached all over, and I was extremely sensitive to light and sound and didn't want to hear or see anything. I just wanted to stay in my little, behind my eyes. And as I came out, my friend Rio said to me, "Do you know what just happened?" And I said, "No." And I really didn't care because I felt so bad. But she said, "Archangel Michael just spoke through you for 45 minutes. And I didn't even know what to believe. I just was like, get out of town, because I didn't even know if I believed in angels at that point. And and so I just felt so bad I couldn't focus on it. But what they all told me was that was true, that I had just brought him through, or he had come through me. And it was really a profound experience for all of us. So because of the way I felt, I wasn't sure I wanted to do that again. But I did try, and I began channeling the masters. Like, all of them. They just, they would line up. It was like, Archangel Michael was my gatekeeper, and I would see him like at the door, like a bouncer, and I'd see this long line of beings waiting to talk to me, and they would come through one after the other, announcing themselves and their energy, and it was a pretty profound thing. And so they would come through, angels, archangels, people's pets and family members who had crossed over, teachers that weren't necessarily masters, but they were all high-level beings with the highest love and grace and gentleness and joy, and nothing dark or scary. So it was very uplifting, and it taught me a lot.
This is a picture of you channeling. Tell us a little bit about that.
In that picture, you can't see because it's behind you. There's this field of white light beside me. There it is. And when I used to channel, I had monthly channeling circles in my home when I lived in North Carolina for years. And people would come regularly, and they would get used to the experience of recognizing the energetic signatures of the different beings who were coming through as they would announce themselves. Sometimes they could say, "I could tell it was Mother Mary before you spoke. I saw blue light around you." Or, "I could tell it was Saint Germain or Sananda," or, whoever it was that was coming through. And it was pretty amazing, because not only could they start reading the field, but sometimes, once in a while, I would open my eyes when I was channeling. And I remember one time seeing all the people that were on one side of the room, all with their eyes closed, leaning all at the exact same angle in their chairs. The field was holding them in that particular way. And but it was, yeah, it was a pretty magical time.
And then you mentioned to me one of them was able to identify the fuzziness, the whiteness to the side of you.
Yeah. Well, my students would recognize and say, "Well, that was Mother Mary," or "That was Archangel Michael," or and they'd say they could see it before. Each master would identify themselves by speaking their name 3 times and anchoring their field in the space. And so a lot of times people would feel it right before they said who they were, and they would notice.
I remember when we were talking, because you had that one experience at the dining table where you just went out of awareness, so to speak. You went out of the body and weren't there during the experience. But then you talked about conscious channeling. And how did that develop? And because I think a lot of people are afraid just because they don't want to have the experience you had.
I'm glad you asked that, because there are a few pieces to that are really important. I started trance channeling, and it was hard on my body, like I described that first time. And I was channeling for a group in Sedona one time, and one of Rio's friends came up to me and said, you know, you don't have to let them use your body like that. You can be a conscious channel. Well, North Carolina back in, back in the 90s, that just was, there weren't many people to talk to about this. So I was really happy to hear this from her. And I started asking my guides that, I would like to be a conscious channel. I'd like it to be more gentle. Help me do this. And so they taught me to hold myself in a different way, to open my eyes, to just start doing that. And it started coming through that way. It was way easier. It's so much easier to be a conscious channel, so much more gentle on the body. And I loved being able to hear what I was saying and to be a part of it. And it's often that I felt the observer. I can hear what I'm saying when I'm channeling, but I can also go, wow, I didn't know that to myself, as it's coming through. And I loved it that it often was not my point of view or in my awareness, the information coming through. And sometimes I had previously had a different point of view that got changed by the channeling. And because of the resonance with it, not because I felt like I had to change. And so it was a big growth spurt for me to go from trance to conscious channeling. And I learned so much from it. And then each time I would listen to the tape of the channeling again, I would get something more out of it. And it would take me right back into the energetic field of being held in that grace. So I actually really love hearing it, and it's the same way for me now with my other, like, music. Yeah.
I think that's one of the reasons that a lot of people come up here and stay for a while longer than just a weekend or a week, because they are interested in the channeling. Maybe they've had experiences on their own, but they need to kind of get it verified and be with a group of people that know how to answer the questions and be on the mountain and kind of be sure that the experience they're having is a good experience. And I think that's the value of why people come here, and that is such a big part of our community.
Yeah, and it's really important for people to know. I used to teach people how to channel, and I stopped doing that because although I could teach them how to get there, what I couldn't teach them was discernment, or the level of discernment that I knew they needed before they were ready to take it out in the world. And they all wanted to go faster than I thought they were ready for. And so I stopped teaching it because I didn't want to put my name behind someone who wasn't ready. Because high-level guides come through with love and grace and tenderness and uplifting messages. They're never dark or scary or give you the doom and gloom feel. And so, because there's always a way to tweak your perspective into a higher vibration and awareness. So, I think it's really important for people to just know that as they start approaching channels.
Well, and also that this is becoming more of, our life in our society, in our country. And it's important to know that there is that way of what you're talking about, the discernment, and that people come to know more and more about that, and know more people such as yourself that they could talk with about that. And that is something you see is happening in our society. Sometimes it'll wiggle into this direction and needs to go back in that direction. And all of that, I think, is part of just establishing these new traditions, these new experiences, and opening people's awareness to more of what's available, not just here on the earth, but in the universe and beyond. It's just a lot of things going on out there that are really willing to help the earth at this time and her people. What more do you want to say about that, about the field of the white light? And
well, I call it the unified field of love because I had so many different masters and angels coming through. The collective of all of that to me is the unified field of love, which we're all a part of. And I think the most important thing is to know that it's within us. It's within everyone. And it's not something to go looking outside yourself for. If a good channel does their job, they teach you that the divine is within, and that's how you access it. And they teach you not so much to be a follower, but to be a student of self. and to trust that. And even if you make mistakes, to learn through your mistakes, to go deeper within, because that's the whole point, is that the love that we are and the love that we seek is all within.
Yeah, it's so true, and it's basically what all of this is about. You know, it's interesting because we spent a long time talking about all of that, and then all of a sudden you started mentioning, you know, I've got this CD and I've got that CD and I'm doing this with music, and then you started to go back into, you know, your childhood and your grandmother's, and it's like, oh, this is a whole other side of you, and wow, what a profound experience you had in that world. Would you like to share that with us?
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah, my grandmother, well, I trained classically at the piano from 3rd grade through college, and loved music. And then when my children were little, I played piano for them every day. We sat and sang Raffi songs and, you know, all kinds of children's music. And so they loved to sing and help me play the piano. And so that's where I thought it was going to stay. And after years of channeling messages and for people and everything that I was doing before, in 2001, it started coming through music. And my grandmother was an opera singer in New York. She sang all over the country and on Broadway. At the time, the Metropolitan Opera was not taking American singers, so she made her living, you know, on Broadway. And she had this amazing gift and was supposedly one of the rare voices in the area at the time. And she was a big inspiration for me. So when I was a baby and reaching for the keys, one of my earliest memories is of her looking down at me and saying, one day, if you learn how to play, this will be yours. And I remember thinking that big piano was going to be mine. You know, that was all I needed to hear. And so I received the piano, and in this picture, her portrait is over the piano. Her painting teacher taught her, and the two on the either side of her portrait were her paintings that she did after her kids went to college. And so that piano is my muse. It's a Steinway Grand that was built as an exhibition piece for the World's Fair back in the 20s or 30s. And anyway, it became my grandmother's piano and then mine. And as soon as I received it, as soon as my mother gave it to me, I started channeling music. And so it's been 20 years now that I've been channeling music.
Can you describe that sort of like you were at the piano and what was happening internally when that first started to develop?
I started hearing music in my head and then felt compelled to go play it. And I sat down and played by ear what I was hearing in my head, and the music would come through in its entirety, fully composed and like a download. And I would start playing it, and then the title would always come with the piece. And if there were lyrics, it would come after I had been playing the piece for a while and had it in my body and integrated it. And then I would write it down. I have this special shorthand that nobody could make sense of but me, that I write in my music books. And so I have that, you know, I have several books now of my music that's come through all these years. And it's been pretty magical because each piece is prescriptive. And so it comes through as a healing sound tonic for whatever's going on in my life. And it just nurtures me and feeds me on a deep soul level. And sometimes I'll wake up in the morning and hear the piece in my head. And if that's so, I have to go to the piano and play it for a while. It's like, this is the vitamin you need today. And then I feel like, okay, now I'm balanced and ready for the day.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's been a real gift.
Yeah,
for me.
And it still happens today, and
yeah,
still keeps
and I
going
still
on.
receive music like that. And I have had so many experiences with my music, so many profound experiences. Sometimes I've had angels over the piano, or people tell me, oh, I see all these colors and angels flying out of your hands while you're playing. And I haven't seen that, but, but I have seen angels hovering over the piano, and I've seen, other things, and then felt really profound grace. I had this one experience. I had a girlfriend named Deborah who passed away many years ago. She had come on my first retreat I ever led to Mount Shasta, and she was a jewelry designer and had taken LaHo-Chi, and so we were friends in North Carolina, and she was getting ready to transition. And so I went to her home, which was about an hour away, and I helped her fix her room so it would be beautiful for her last days. And I drove home, and when I got home, I went straight to the piano to process my emotions, as I always do. And so I was playing the piano and sitting there, and it was probably about 4 in the afternoon. And all of a sudden, I saw Deborah holographically walk through my front door. Now, she's an hour away in her bed, right? But I saw her walk through my front door, and she walked straight over to me at the piano and put her hand on the piano and looked me straight in the eye and nodded her head. And as soon as she nodded her head, I started receiving the download for this song called Forever Love. And it was the title track, or is the title track to the Forever Love CD. And it was the beginning of that CD, which is full of pieces that came through as different people I was close to were in different stages of death and dying. And so each piece holds a component of moving through that process for those leaving their bodies, for those grieving, and all the pieces were just different prescriptive energies that really rocked my world. It was an amazing experience. It cracked my heart open. I was sobbing as I was playing it, and then the lyrics came through, and I sat probably at the piano for 2 hours playing it, knowing I was going to record it and send it to her, and I did, and I did that immediately. And so a couple days later, she called and she said, "Beloved, I want this at my funeral service." And so it was played at her funeral service, and it was, just another form of amazing grace.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Is there anything else you want to say about, the whole thing of the your relationship with music and the piano, and something about, you've been talking about the CDs you created, how were they created and what are they? Can people get them? I mean, there's always that curiosity, along the line.
So I have 6 CDs that have been put out already. I'm just recording a 7th. They have come through in the same way, and they all hold different prescriptive frequencies. And the music holds the transmission of grace that I receive when they come through. And one of the reasons is because it's innate, but the other is because I have an amazing sound engineer named Lumen White, who is local to Mount Shasta. And that's an amazing story too, because when I was making my first CD, I really didn't know who to call. I was so inexperienced with this. So I thought, all right, I was standing in my kitchen talking to Spirit, and I was like, all right, you want me to do this CD? You better bring me the people I need to work with. And I immediately heard in my head, Paul White. And I thought, okay, great. I don't know who that is, but that's a place to start. Well, the phone rang literally 20 or 30 seconds after I heard the name Paul White. And I answered it, and it was my friend Thomas, who has since passed. And he goes, "Hey, how you doing?"
Told him
what was going on, and I said, "Yeah, I just heard Paul White." I said, "But I don't know him, and I don't know how to get in touch with him." He goes, "Oh, he's a great friend of mine. Here's his number." And so that was how I reached him, and he goes by Lumen now. And Lumen is a brilliant sound engineer. He is such a genius and such a heart-centered being. And he hears and sees and feels energy more clearly and profoundly than anyone I've ever met in my life. So he knows how to intentionally infuse music with whatever energy you want it to hold. And so, and he uses his power for good. And so he has been great because I can say to him, Lumen, this piece needs to really open the heart, really help someone let go, really help someone feel deep peace or whatever I tell him. And he's like, I'm on it. And so the combination of the transmission in the music and what we are intentionally putting in is beautiful. And it changes the tone, it changes the feel. And I've had several people tell me they've had physical healings just listening to the CD, or in one of my concerts, you know, they'll say I was aching all over before I started and I feel fabulous now, like I had a massage. So, you know, I can't take credit for it. I feel like I just work here.
Yeah.
But
show up.
I know I show up because the grace is palpable, and it's a blessing for me too. So.
And that's the one thing I've noticed about all the different programs that have come out in the last 20, 30 years. You know, it's not just like everybody learns one thing, but one person learns this, one learns that, this comes into another person's life. It's all about energy. It's all about a more abstract field of life that people are starting to look at, experience, and then wanting to understand what they're looking at, what they're experiencing, what they're feeling. And you have had so many different aspects of that. You know, where, you know, the channeling was like one way, the music was another way. How do you sort of relate to all that? Because it's been definitely on the surface and definitely very profound for you. Anybody else in your family having those experiences? How do you think it all sort of, you know, why me kind of question?
I definitely had the why me for a long time. And I just didn't understand it because as far as I knew, or no one in my family on either side had these kinds of experiences. You know, my mom thought I was nuts. My dad thought I should be the next Ann Landers, and you know, they just didn't know what to do with me. And
how many people listening to this can raise their hand and say, that's me too?
Yeah,
it's a phenomenon.
And in North Carolina, you know, 20, 30 years
so.
ago, you really couldn't talk about this to many people.
Yeah.
I mean, still they roll their eyes. So it's easier in California. And but when you come to this kind of work, if you don't have a sounding board, it's really difficult. I did have that in Rio and Dan. They were like spiritual parents for me, holding my hand through this, because living in California for years, they had been exposed to all kinds of spiritual growth that they could say, yeah, we've seen this before. Look, and they held my hand through it and really helped me. But what really helped the most was Spirit teaching me. I had them in my ear all the time. And so I would be awakened at night. If I was in the shower, if I was driving the car, if I was in the bathroom, you know, because I was so busy with my kids, those were my most still moments. And so they would just bombard me with voices and poetry and do this, do that, you know. And when I first started receiving messages, I did not know how to listen to my guidance yet. I was a little bit intuitive, and I just didn't know what to do with it, or if I could trust it. So it took me a while to really stop doubting and trust. But in the process, I was shown how to listen to guidance. And they started, I love to tell a story because it's just so mundane, but they started with my sock drawer.
Who would have thought?
Yeah. And so I had 6 pairs of white socks that I used for the gym at the time. And I would reach for one and I'd hear, no, not that one. And then I'd reach for the next one. No, not that one. And I'd go to the next one. No, not that one. I'd be like, why does it matter? And it's like, it matters. Pay attention. So then I would reach for another one and I'd say, this one? They go, yes. And I could feel in my body the resonance in every cell of the yes. right? There was like no energy flow on the nose, but the yes was like my whole body expanded into it. And I was like, oh, okay, this is what a yes really feels like. And so that happened every day for months until I was so good at it, I could just feel which pair. And still today, every once in a while, I mean, this was, in the early 90s or mid 90s. And so still today, every once in a while, I'll reach for something and I hear, not that one. I'm like, okay, you're still on board. That's great. But I do know, and I'd say for 25 years now, I have listened to my guidance impeccably and would never go against it.
See,
Because it's that reliable.
When I was talking with you at the wedding, that was the one thing that I really thought was profound, because what it does is it simply just, that was a scientific experiment.
Yeah.
To prove something that was more abstract.
Yeah.
And we live in a society, we live in a time when that is so important to people that don't understand this. They have to see the science. And in a way, it was like, even with yourself, it was like, okay, they had to show you something so that you could step forward and accept what they were saying.
And the stepping stones were important, because you don't go from a pair of white socks to, quitting your job and moving across country. It took a while for me to really trust it. And then even once it was clear, like turn left, don't go there, change your flight, whatever it is, I had to get through tests, with myself of not listening and seeing that I really don't like the consequences of not listening. I don't mean that something necessarily bad happened, but I was always sorry I didn't listen. And when I did, I was never sorry. I was always glad I listened. And sometimes in hindsight, in retrospect.
And I think, we have a rich tradition of indigenous people in the Mount Shasta area. And that's a big part of their training, is learn how to listen to the forest, listen to the this and to the that.
Right.
And just developing that inner listening. I know even with myself, you can begin to distinguish between sort of what are your own thoughts and what are someone else's thoughts, or what are not to be listened to, or, just that whole 9 yards there. And it seemed like you kind of sorted through it and always kept measuring it to your own internal clock or some sort of level of truth. Yeah. And it developed as a ongoing experience that you could trust after a while.
It really helped. When I was channeling for other people and doing readings, and mediumship, I didn't know the things that were coming out of my mouth, because it wasn't my family or my business. It was their information.
Right.
And I would hear it and I'd think to myself, I cannot say this. They are going to think I'm nuts. But every time, the piece that I pushed through my own fear of being wrong, as soon as I would say, oh, I'm seeing a clown jumping on a bed, or I'm seeing this, or some crazy thing that made no sense to me, they go, oh my God, that's just exactly right. And so I learned to just let go and get my ego out of the way and just trust what was coming through me. And every time, it was the one place where they connected the most. And so I learned to trust, and I learned to listen, and not doubt it anymore. Doubt really stops the flow of your guidance. And so, and when I used to teach workshops on how to develop your intuition and guidance and live your life that way, that was one of the most important things for people to understand. They said, well, I don't hear, I don't listen. I said, well, if you have to get clear what your motivation is. You have to get clear what you're most afraid to hear. Because once you get that out of the way, then you can start really listening.
Yeah, it's very, very valuable. And I think what you've just said in that regard, is a real takeaway for people of what you can offer in terms of adding to the conversation of people's experiences out there and which direction they should go in. I thank you so much for that. Tell us about the different CDs that you've got.
Okay, so I have Grateful Day. Let's see if people can see this. This one has the mountain on it. And the mountain was such an inspiration for me as I came here and had so many profound experiences. I came here 30 times in 7 years before I moved here. And
So this isn't only the story about the people that live here, but a lot of people are doing it just
I
like
couldn't get
you.
enough. Every time I came, I had profound, life-changing, mystical experiences, and met people who were deep soul family from other lifetimes, and I just couldn't get enough. So I thought, well, we're clearly not in Kansas anymore. And I really like what's happening here. So yeah, I kept coming back. So I felt so grateful for my time in Mount Shasta. So this one's called Grateful Day, and it's all instrumental, easy listening. This is Forever Love. Forever Love is the one I mentioned that my friend Deborah came through my front door with. And hospice in North Carolina used to use this CD to help people in different stages. And it has a booklet inside with song notes and lyrics of some great stories of how the music came through. And then there's Christmas Presents, which is mostly instrumental. And it has one track at the end that I wrote. And then I did one called Some Other Time, Some Other Place. And this one is all instrumental. It's piano and cello featuring Michal Palsowitz from the Rogue Symphony. And I love what he did on this CD, exactly what I heard in my head. And the CD, every piece took me as it came through into another world, into some other time and place that was much more gentle and relaxed and slower paced. Like it felt like Eastern Europe, maybe before all the wars, before the world wars, before technology had its way with us. And so I really feel transformed and transported by this CD. And then these two, well, the next ones are the most recent. This is All the World's My Family. And this one is Living Love, and they both have vocals, and they're all uplifting, heart-opening songs about being inspired by life. And yeah, this one, the Forever Love CD, was really interesting because when it came through, I not only heard the piano parts and the lyrics, I heard all the musical parts, and I played all the musical parts on this CD with a synthesizer because I heard the cello a certain line. I heard the different aspects, and I felt like it had to be that precisely. And then on the other
that
CDs,
was a growth
there were
process right there.
Yeah, but on the other CDs, I had other musicians. Like on this one, on Grateful Day, Gary Cooper, who used to live here, played flute on a couple tracks, and I love that he lives on with his contribution. So yeah, and the new one is going to be all piano. And
are you going to be here when you compose it and create it?
well, I recorded it this week, and so now it needs to be mixed and mastered, and yeah.
Very exciting. So where are you today, and what's your sort of direction, and is it like a little bit of everything that's kind of grown in you through the years, all these things you've been talking about, or do you feel something definitely different now?
I feel like they all brought me to this place for sure, in the sense that all the years of channeling all the different masters and angels and beings, I feel like that set me up to be able to receive all the subtle nuances of the music, right? Learning how to recognize and understand and feel into different energetic signatures of all those beings helped me realign to the music in all its subtle nuances and ways. So that I felt was a big setup.
Yeah, for
and
certain.
the guidance, of course, is just part of life and living well and being in grace. And so now I've been doing concerts like through Airbnb experiences in my home for people who want to go on musical
Airbnb
journeys.
experiences?
So Airbnb offers lodging on one platform. They also have a platform for experiences in the different towns. So you can look up any place that you're visiting and see what experiences might be available to you through Airbnb's platform. And so you can sign up, and you could have cooking lessons from Thailand or flamenco dancing from Spain, right? Some of them are on Zoom, some of them are in person. So I offer in-person musical journeys for people to come lie on the floor and receive the transmission of the music and close their eyes and relax into it and go flying with it.
Oh, that's
And
wonderful.
so,
And
yeah.
then, so are you offering that now, or?
Yeah, I offer that now, and people can request for private groups or their own time
That's
slot.
great.
And
And they
so-
do it here in Mount Shasta.
Yeah, they get to come to my music sanctuary and do that. And so I do that and then record more. And I'm also teaching LaHo-Chi still, like the first weekend in November this year.
Perfect.
And
Do you do anything on Zoom or online that people who can't come to Mount Shasta could?
Not now, because I feel like what I do really requires one-on-one attention and to hold it and share it responsibly, to take care of people and nurture them through their spiritual growth and opening. I feel like I need to be there.
Yeah, and that would be so much more for them because they could ask their questions. You'd be there to answer them, help guide them through that
Right.
level
and
of
and
experience.
it's a big physical experience too, and emotional. And so it's gentle and graceful, but it's very powerful and life-changing. And I feel like, knowing what I went through with it, I would not have wanted to be left hanging out there by myself trying to decipher everything. Yeah.
So this is one of the hidden gems of Mount Shasta. Please, when you come here again, know that there's so many people doing so many interesting things here. And the sincerity of the work, the kindness and the sort of humbleness, you see a lot of that up here. And the simplicity of people up here. It's it's rural America. It's not like the metropolitan areas where if you want to go see this movie or that and that and that and that, it's that quietness that's at the foundation of life that is just very lively here. And when people kind of synchronize into that, then that growth starts to happen, and it's an internal experience. It's not, getting in the car and going somewhere to have an experience.
It is. It's like my book. My book was my private journal for probably 3 years. And
Did you talk about the book? Let's
no, not yet.
let's go into the book.
The book is called The Cosmic Cradle.
Okay.
And
Do you have a copy to show?
Yes. I thought it was my private journal. Well, it's up on the screen.
Oh, good.
So, when it came through, I was being given the lessons and the poetry in it, not in order. But each day, whatever I was going through in my life, I would get a lesson that would help me. And so as I had the book coming through and the lessons and the poetry, I was inspired and uplifted and had great insight from it. And at the end of the journal, as I got to the very last page, I was given the title and the foreword, and that's when I knew it was a book. And I was surprised to find that when I started putting it together in the order I felt guided to, that there was a poem that went with each lesson. And so it really is a simple book with simple poetry to help people find a way to be inspired and uplifted with it, but just to live life with a lifted spirit. And so that was really beautiful for me. And then after the book, I started receiving much deeper, more expanded, lengthy poetry and before the music. So that was really great. And in one of my classes, I had this experience of being guided to do something different I hadn't planned on. And the experience was I was teaching a class on how to open to your intuition and guidance and to create and manifest from that place. And in the process of the class, I was told to let everyone take turns lying down on the floor and having their name sung to them with love, just as much love as we could all muster, and any name that they wanted to hear or be called. And so it never occurred to me I had to have a turn. And at that point, my whole life, I had been called a nickname that was not my real name, and I didn't like it. And I had always wished for my real name and never knew what it was. And so, in the process of this activity, everyone had a turn. We would sing like we were toning to them, just bathe them with love in our voices. And at the end, they all turned to me and they said, "Well, what do you want us to sing to you?" And I froze because I thought to myself, I do not want to hear them say my nickname. And so I thought to myself for the millionth time, I wish I had my real name. And in that moment, I heard, just like you would imagine on TV, this male booming voice that I knew was God, just really loud, say, "Beloved," and like a bolt of lightning into my body, cracked me open. I heard and felt the whole house shake, the windows shake. I was cracked open, sobbing with profound joy and ecstasy and chills ongoing for I don't know how many minutes. And so I'm standing there sobbing, having this huge experience, and all my students are standing around looking at me like, they clearly didn't hear or feel this. And what's wrong with this woman? And so they said, "Well, what do you want us to sing to you?" And I said, "Beloved." And I laid down on the floor and they sang to me for about 10 minutes. And of course, I realized in hindsight, I had been set up to receive my name. And every time I heard my name after that, for months, Rio especially would call me up and she'd go, "Beloved." And it would send me into chills and bring the tears and the heart opening and into that experience all over again every time. So it was a huge activation for months. And I loved it. And I didn't want another name to clarify it. I thought, I don't need another name. How do you make this any better? And,
Exactly.
And my mother used to say, "You think you're the beloved?" And I'm like, "No, Mom, we all are." And she said, "Well, can't you remember that on your own?" And I'd say, "Yeah, but when I hear it, it reminds me that whoever I'm speaking to is also my beloved, and that all life is beloved, and we're all each other's beloveds." And so that was really beautiful. And then I had been told before I listened to my guidance, I had been told to change my last name to Heartsong. And I didn't want to do it because I thought, that's going to sound crazy and I'm just not doing it. And I had met people here in Mount Shasta who had the last name of Heartsong. And I didn't want them to think I was copying them. And I just didn't, I didn't know what to do with it then. But a few years later, after I had already been beloved for a while, I woke up one morning and I heard, "Beloved Heartsong, go change your name legally." And so I did it. And I realized then it was really going to help me anchor my music in a deeper way, and it has. And the Heartsong connection that I can tell from the people who I know who have that last name, and for myself, I feel like that somehow comes through the Hawthorns. So,
Interesting.
yeah.
And the other one that I know of that has that Heartsong last name took people to, have those visits. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
And that is kind of how it happens. This whole spiritual world, there's this interconnectedness in the most unlikely places and things like that. How would you like to sort of wrap up this wonderful moment where we got to hear this about you and then that about you and then that about you? And what would you like to leave with everybody about what you can offer them, what you are, or just however, what would you like to say?
I would say that we all have gifts and we all have our own paths and lessons and stories. And I think it's so important to remember to live the love you are, to bask in the love you are, to regularly abide in the love you are, and not to put anyone else's experience or story above your own. It may seem more glamorous, it may seem more fantastical, but the truth is we all are the same divine life force opening and awakening in our own perfect time and schedule. And the best way to nurture ourselves and all life is to show up with love in and be nurturing to ourselves and trust and follow our internal guidance, and to respect it in others and encourage it in others, so that we don't take over and assume we know what's best for anyone else. Just to live by example through our own hearts. Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us today. It's a real joy. And
thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. You're welcome to
share.
come back anytime and keep giving us more and more and more.
Thank
and
you.
That's what the Best of Mount Shasta is all about. Thank you so much for tuning in. You'll see in the credits that are the websites that Beloved has and how to contact her by email. And don't be shy, just if you're feeling like maybe she could answer some of your questions, or maybe you could come to Mount Shasta and be with her, or over the phone, or whatever. This is what we're all about, just to give you a chance to see what's happening in Mount Shasta, the diversity of it, and yet each person has something really wonderful to contribute, and that's what we're about here. We live our lives simply, but yet we're connected to the whole world. Thank you so much.
Thank
I
you.
really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes. See you next time.